On this episode of the show, I have with me Yoni Michael. He is co-founder at Typedef. We're going to be talking about operating under stealth mode. So Yoni does have experience as being a founder previously, and he has some decisions and choices to make, and he decided he might want to operate under stealth mode, and he's going to talk to us about those decisions, some of the concerns, some of the benefits, some of the detriments. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about that fluidity and early product market fit and maybe a few other things. But Yoni, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Before we start, can you tell everyone what the company does?
Yeah, so we're typedef.ai. We just launched and came out of stealth about a month ago. We're a seed-based startup here in the peninsula in San Mateo in the Bay Area. And we're building AI infrastructure. So the whole idea is to help companies really accelerate their ability to run production AI workloads and go from that stage that everyone loves to be in and is very fun to experiment nowadays, which is prototyping and experimenting with AI. But how do we actually now get these workloads into production, run them at scale, operationalize these AI workloads? And that's the challenge that we're trying to address head on with the AI data engine that we've built.
Very cool. All right. I love it. So you mentioned, obviously, you just came out of stealth mode, and you have obviously been a part of other, founder experiences. I guess tell us a little bit about the decision to operate under stealth mode and kind of, let's start there.
Yeah, I think it's a very prominent and a very prominent topic and kind of subject for founders oftentimes to think about when they're strategizing, like building their company in the very early days, right? And like you mentioned, Amir, this is my second time founding a company. And so I had another startup back in 2014, 2016 that was called Coolan. And as a first-time founder, I think generally your inclination is to try and keep your cards as close to your vest as possible, right? And not reveal, let's say, what you're going on in building. And so it's a very natural and kind of innate instinct when you hear about companies coming out of stealth mode or being in stealth mode and keeping their ideas, not really socializing around it. So there's definitely pros and cons for each strategy for staying in stealth mode, being in stealth mode and not. And there's also, it's not just like black or white, right? There's a whole zone between there that's gray, which is you can still be in stealth mode while still talking about your idea. The whole nature of, let's say, the seed round, right, is you go and you work really hard to raise a round and get buy-in from investors and build the initial idea and foundation on top of what you want to bring to market. But the whole idea and goal behind the seed round is to try and find early signs of product market fit, right? And so there are definitely different strategies of getting there. And so stealth mode is one of them. But I think during this episode, we can talk about, like, let's say, what some of those pros and cons are and what the right balance is of, you can definitely be too stealthy and that can be a detriment to you as you're trying to figure out what those early breadcrumbs are and those early signs and hints are of product market fit. So it's a very, very cliche and very common topic that is explored a lot, especially in the early stages. We can discuss more on that.
Absolutely. I mean, within your space, within the market you guys are working in, obviously, AI has attracted a lot of venture capital dollars, lots of attention. I think those are things we know. Does that fuel, or does that drive wanting to be in stealth because there is so many dollars and you are potentially afraid of somebody seeing what you're doing or your angle? Is that something you were concerned about?
A little bit. I think that definitely enters it, right? I think, like you're saying, there's a lot of capital that's getting driven into AI infrastructure, verticalized AI. The tricky part is when that is happening, when there's a lot of innovation and capital going into it, there's a lot of really, really amazingly talented, smart people that are innovating and building there, right? but it also, it becomes a very noisy kind of environment that you're in, right? And the whole goal is to try and figure out how you can stand out amongst the noise, right? Because there is a lot of mind share and a lot of innovation and a lot of different solutions and frameworks and platforms that are going into getting built around AI. And so, to a certain extent, because of that, things are changing, not even like so quickly in the AI landscape, right? Like there's always going to be faster models, newer models that are coming out, new infrastructure, new frameworks that people are getting excited about, new buzzwords, things like context engineering, right? Before it was prompt engineering, now it's context engineering. And so to a certain extent, you want to try and remain a little bit not revealing too much around it, but at the same time, you risk if you're not going out there and having conversations and testing out a lot of the product ideas that you have and a lot of the platform and the product that you've built, you risk at losing touch with what the market's actually coming in and being very receptive of, right? And so it's really important to strike that good balance of, we're not necessarily going to come out here and reveal everything from day one. And honestly, a lot of that has to do with from day one, you don't really know exactly what the final product is that you're going to bring to market, right? And so what being in stealth does, it gives you that room and that ability and that flexibility to really like course correct and adjust as you're going through, let's say, the first 6 months to a year of, building out the team first and foremost, which takes a couple months, the very hard recruiting environment in the Bay Area when you're competing with tons of amazing companies, top-notch talent here, but, people are very well gainfully employed. And it's very hard when you're an early stage startup and you don't have that brand recognition to be able to recruit, right? So that takes the first, let's say, 2 to 3 months of while you're in stealth mode. And then once you start building, right, you really want to be testing out, right? Like my whole theory and my co-founder Kostas and I is like, you can never start go-to-market motions early enough, right? And so what that means is that you're going out and you're testing out, you're doing a lot of discovery, customer discovery, right? Even though before you have anything built, before you actually start coding, vibe coding, whatever you're doing, it's very important to go and get a lot of validation and build a lot of conviction on what you want to build. And then as you're building, right, and let's say now you've recruited the team, you have a solid engineering team, they're going on and building. And as they're building, you're testing out everything that they're building and you're getting feedback on and iterating. That feedback loop and cycle is very important to have very tight, especially in the early stage, right? So what stealth means in there is that we're not launching, we're not GA, we're not ready for more companies to come out and try and use a platform. The platform's not ready, but it means that we're figuring out what that platform is going to be when it comes time to GA, right? By testing a lot of what we're building as we're building it, right? Because one of the worst things you can do is I'm going to be full stealth mode. I'm not going to talk to anyone. I'm going to hire a team. I'm going to go and engineer in the closet for, let's say, the first year. And then you come out for some fresh air and you start testing and you realize that what you've built isn't at all what the market wants, right? And that's especially risky when you're in the AI landscape and things are changing very, very quickly.
That is very true. I guess when you look at, the conversation, finding that product market fit, that feedback is also super important in early days. If you are operating in stealth, it doesn't mean you can't talk about the company. It just also means you're not getting visibility at a certain level of other people being able to look at it, see it. In terms of making sure you're being in front of the right stakeholders, getting that feedback loop dialed in on what you are building, talk to us a little bit about that process and how does stealth mode hurt that at all? Is it an issue?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when we go and have these discovery conversations, right, and we try and have many different strategies, a lot of it's through our network, right? Those are the best when you can get warm intros into people that are fitting, let's say, the companies that are fitting your ICP, your ideal customer profile, along with the right personas, right? So you know who the buyer and the user is going to be. You kind of want to get and target those people as you're doing this initial discovery. Once we have these conversations scheduled and we're sharing and talking to people and doing discovery, we're not holding any cards close to our chest. We're telling them our mission, we're talking about the problem set, how we see the landscape, and then what our hypothesis is, right? And so we start at kind of at a very high level with some, like, let's say, boring slides a lot of times for like practitioners and people that like to be very hands-on. But then we even go a step deeper. Here's a demo. Here's what we built, right? And furthermore, here's a sandbox environment for you to go and try and tinker with it and use it on your own, right? And that's how you get the strongest kind of validation there. So, the people that we've talked to, and maybe the people that they talk to about us, know exactly it is what we're building and what our mission is, right? It's just not generally publicly available, is kind of the idea there. But it's super important to, right? Because a lot of times the instincts of first-time founders, and I come across it a lot, right? Like first-time founders' instinct is like, what I'm building is very top secret, and it's going to be a huge party when I come out of stealth, and we're going to make a lot of noise about it, and the floodgates are going to open, and everyone's going to come inbound, right? And that's a lot of times the general stereotype, I think, if you will, for like, people that are building for the first time, and so that's what we're trying to get a good balance against, right? Is because the whole idea is like execution ends up being what the most important thing is, right? Like you can have a brilliant idea. Many people do have brilliant ideas, but once you're funded and you're actually able to execution is the delta there, right? That's what makes or break the idea, right? So even if you have the best idea, but you can't, let's say, have good strategies for building a top-notch team that can execute at the idea at the velocity that you need in order to hit the runway that you have left, then you're kind of dead in the water, right? And so a lot of people hold that close to their chest and they think like, my competitive edge is the idea and the vision and the mission of what we're going to be building. But really the competitive edge is the ability to execute at the end of the day. And part of what execution means is getting that validation and going and having these customer conversations to really make sure that you're building the right thing, so that when you do come out and you publicly talk about what it is, you've already had hundreds of conversations with practitioners, with buyers. You're able to identify who's going to be interested, who's going to be buying it. You even have a sense of like, okay, am I going, let's say, bottoms up, and I have like some open source project and initiative that's going to try and drive a lot of engagement? Or am I going tops down, meaning I'm starting with like the head of AI or VPs and selling the platform or the tooling in that way, right? So it's all around coming, like the whole point of being in stealth is to figure out a lot of these motions. And it's a lot of times it's totally fine if even when you come out of stealth, you don't know exactly and you're still trying different strategies, but you've already made a lot of progress in there, right? And you're getting closer to figuring out like the ideal persona, ideal customer, and what it is exactly you're going to be building.
I think that's very good insight. And I guess when you think about, being in that stage of stealth mode, obviously you're going through the self-discovery. You don't want the market to see some of that dirty laundry, right? You want to keep that a little bit close to the chest, because obviously you want them to have confidence that, hey, this is what we're building, not, hey, we're trying out a bunch of things and, you might see us change the website 6 times in the next month. So that obviously is a negative perception. Does the anticipation because you mentioned the founder, they think they're going to come out of stealth and all these great things are going to happen. Does the target market potentially also have a bit of that anticipation of like, well, you've been stealth, so obviously you're working on something no one should hear about. What are you doing? And the expectation changes a bit.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, let's say like everyone that we've talked to, and this also includes like, investors, because they're always interested. Once you put in something stealth on your LinkedIn profile, they're always trying to get inside and understand what it is. And that's part of it, building relationships with both the market, right? Like the practitioners and the people that will be using it, also investors and other just stakeholders generally. I think it shouldn't be a big surprise for the people that were in the know that you've had discussions with once you lift the curtain up and come out of stealth, right? Because a lot of times they've helped build that storyline for you and they've helped build the narrative. Now, what changes a lot is what you're saying is right. Like, let's say like the go-to-market assets and material and messaging, right? Like before we came out of stealth, we had an idea of, let's say, what the product is and what the platform is more or less. But let's say, what's the copy on the website, right? Like, how do we go and test out some of those things? And those are things that it's going to be a living, breathing document, right? Like, that's going to continue to adapt as we start engaging with more design partners and closing more customers and bringing more people on board the platform, because we'll start understanding more practical, realistic use cases that people are using the platform for, right? So especially in the AI landscape, like, you can be a prompt engineering company 2 years ago, and now if you go to that same company's website, you'll see that it's context engineering, for example, right? And so a lot of that continues to let's say, adapt. But overall, I think that the key is to really iterate on the messaging a lot before coming out of stealth, going through like messaging framework exercises, right? Like, we had a great PR consultant that we worked with where we did like, I don't know, maybe like 10 different drafts of the messaging. And then we would go and test it out. And as we were going through and having more of these design partner conversations and early prospect conversations, we would put together the slides that would reflect different parts of the messaging and really kind of see where it's resonating more. And that's something that as a founder, you can't do enough of, right? That you have to continue to iterate and figure out exactly which messaging resonates the most, right? And as like an example for that, like, we had a great design partner come through once we actually launched, and one that we're working with closely with now. And he's like, I went to the website at the launch. The high level messaging resonated with me a lot, which is like, how do we go and bring AI projects into production? How do we bridge that gap of really operationalizing it and making sure that, okay, I built this half-week project, like, that is really impressive. Everyone really loved. But me bridging that gap and thinking about how do I now go and deploy it for my 1 million+ users, that's like, I have no idea how to even do that, right? So he's like, when you guys came up with that messaging, which was like, we help bridge that gap, we help give you a lot of those things that help you operationalize AI workloads, we remove a lot of the glue code and complexities with building these kinds of products. He's like, that caught my attention immediately, right? And then I wanted to get a better understanding and go a little bit deeper to see what the actual product was. So part of our launch, we also open sourced a core part of our technology, which is the open source framework called Fennec, which is essentially like a data frame, PySpark inspired library that helps with a lot of inference and LLM abstractions to help you build these multi-step like inference pipelines, right? And so then he said, I went to the Fennec repository because it was linked from your website. And there are a lot of examples and demos. And then it really clicked for me, like to actually see. So the whole cycle was kind of there where the messaging resonated at a high level. And then he was able to take it a step deeper and really understand it. Those are the things we love to hear as founders, right? Of course, it doesn't always happen that way. And, there's always more to improve there so that it resonates with a broader audience. But it's really tricky to be able to find that line of, you want your website copy to appeal to as broad of an audience as possible, but also not be too high level where people have no idea what you're actually building, what the actual product is. And that's part of the process of iterating and figuring out as you're in stealth mode, right? You want to go and really work on these things and refine these things so that when you're coming to market, it's not like a random messaging that doesn't resonate with anyone, right? Like, for a high percentage or fairly high confidence that the messaging we're on is, let's say, like 70, 80% of the way there. Maybe it's not 100%, but it's good enough to now go to market with, and then you can keep improving with it as you're starting to sell and GA and open the product up for more people.
Absolutely. A question maybe that came to mind is the VC side. Obviously, they know it's a super early company. They want to get updates. They want to understand how things are going. Going through this product market fit journey early, what comfort level? Well, not what comfort. That's not the question. When you're talking to the investors and you're keeping them up to date, there's obviously lots of variables running through your head, through the company's head. You want to be as transparent as possible, but also you don't want a loss of confidence. You don't want them to fear that these guys are just grasping at an idea. They're trying to figure it out and hope they can deliver on something. I guess when you come to the actual investor side, you're talking to them about, being, obviously they know you're in stealth, but the product market fit journey. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like you can go around and talk to most of the investors in the valley here, because we've talked to most of, if not all of, like, let's say the data infra type of investors here. And you can ask them about us and they'll tell you that what we initially pitched and raised the seed round on is very different than what we actually came to market with and are actually building right now, right? And that's just a testament of how much things can actually change when you're in stealth mode and you're trying to figure out what to build, right? What we initially thought we were building was, let's say, more of a pure data infra platform that was meant to be like a query engine that can work on distributed workloads, and more of an analytics engine that is meant to be trying to replace Spark workloads, right? And so there was no real signs of even like AI workloads. It wasn't as much on the unstructured data. It was more like structured and tabular data. And we started going and building down that path, but we quickly realized that we needed to go and course correct. We built something that was great. It was like, great developer experience, way cheaper than running Spark workloads. And it was cool technology, but at the end, we never really got, and this is part of the process, right? We went out and talked and showed it off and had people try and use it. We never really were able to get a sense of like that pure buy signal that you're looking for. People were like, yes, it's great, primarily because no one ever wants to tell you that your baby's ugly, right? And people tend to be like very nice when they see new technology, because people are happy to give feedback and tinker with new things. But you have to kind of read a level lower than that, right? You have to actually say, okay, hey, look, like if I were to say this costs $100,000 for a year, right? Would this be something that you're interested in, right? And that's where you can actually peel a few layers of the onion back and see what the true buy intent is, right? And so for the first, let's say 4 or 5 months in stealth mode, we were building towards that. Then we quickly realized by having a lot of these conversations that that we need to shift a little bit more, right? It can't be as much as let's go and replace Spark workloads. It's more along how do we offer, we still want to build within data processing and build a compute engine, essentially a query engine. But how would you now think about where there are more problems that are unsolved? Tabular structured data, mostly solved, not the best experience. If you heavy Spark shop, people will tell you that, but there's a lot of infra and there's a lot of thought that's built in and frameworks that are working there, where there's a lot more unsolved problems. And this is what we were hearing by having these conversations. People are like, yeah, great, I can do my structured, but when it comes time to now, I want to build all these like board mandated AI initiatives. That's really where I'm struggling. So then we quickly shifted towards, okay, like how do we build processing, but for these unstructured workloads, which is where there's lots of opportunity and lots of people that are hacking things together and DIYing it, right? So that's where we came in. But to go back to your question, right? The VCs, like we were pitched something totally different. We've been in touch with the ones that we're close with, and we've kind of been updating them alongside. You try and keep they keep tabs and they check in, and so we update them along the lines of how we're thinking about the market, what's shifted from our perspective, and so what we have now, what Typedef is now, is completely different than what we pitched. And so some of those that we haven't talked to since we pitched are probably surprised when we came out of stealth and said, hey, we're like an AI data engine, and not like a Spark replacement or an OLAP platform. But the ones that have been in the know that we've been talking to and been updating are kind of alongside that. But I think it's important to keep that line of communication open and build those relationships throughout, because VCs know the name of the game too in the seed round, which is like, you raise a seed round and you still don't have it figured out, right? Like they still expect really good founders and teams to be able to go through and do that work to figure out exactly what it is you're going to bring to market, right? And that's par for the course. So the good investors, at least, will welcome the idea that we've shifted onto something that we think and we've tested has more potential and more of a market for. And so it's kind of an art, I would say, more than a science, right? And different people handle investor relations differently. Some people are like, I'm not actually going to talk and spend time with VCs until I'm like running an official fundraise process. But I think there's a lot of merit, my personal takes, there's a lot of merit to building the relationship throughout, keeping them updated, at least like not all of them, but the select few that you met previously and you think that are interested in what you're working on and all of that. So it's interesting.
It is. You hit the nail on the head. It's definitely more art than science. I guess, if somebody does, I know you've gone through this process, obviously you have the benefit of that experience. If somebody does want to reach out to you and ask you a question because you obviously have gone through this, is there a good way of touching base with you or connecting with you for a follow-up question?
Yeah, happy to. So on LinkedIn, just LinkedIn/Yoni Michael, and you can find me there. And that's probably the most effective way. I'm very active there. And, part of also like going to market is posting a lot of this messaging on LinkedIn. So making LinkedIn posts and seeing how it's received. So, very active there. Happy to help. I'm always love working and spending time with early stage founders, and we're big on building a community here. We have a data infra/AI meetup that we host with our friends at Tobico Data every few months. And so if you're in the peninsula, let's go and message me and we can go and even grab coffee. I'm happy to chat with anyone that's building. I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs. I think they're very brave souls. And it's, in the Valley, there's so much opportunity, and it's very easy to go and get a nice, cushy, high paid job anywhere else. But the ones that are actually, pushing innovation and driving AI and industries forward are the ones that are going out on a limb and jumping into the deep end and trying to see if they can build something fresh from the ground up. So always happy to support anyone that's going along that path.
Fantastic, Yoni. I think that's great, and hopefully people take you up on that. Again, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for chatting with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Amir. It was great been following you throughout the year. So excited to finally be able to make an appearance on it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's it for this show. We'll be back again. Different guest, different topic. If you enjoyed Yoni's conversation, please share it with somebody else. I think he has a lot of great points, especially if you are a founder, very early stage, or you're thinking about being a founder. He covered a lot of areas of the benefits of starting stealth. Potentially some of the issues around that. How do you navigate some of those conversations? I mean, we covered a ton of ground. He gave us some great examples of his own journey. So please share this episode with others. I think there's a lot of people that could benefit from it. Also, subscribe, comment, let me know how the show is going for you. Thank you, and goodbye.